So I ended up having to sign a lease and move in with a complete stranger named Adam, almost a year ago. Adam was a bit unusual, but we got along okay at the start. He was a bit too strict about chores and would constantly use my belongings without permission. We ended up having a massive argument, and I just lashed out in anger and punched him in the face. I remember watching in slow motion as he fell backwards and hit his head off the table. It was very clear that his neck had snapped, as it shouldn't bend at that angle. I quickly ran into my room and hid. I didn't think that I would sleep, but somehow I drifted off. I awoke the next morning and was terrified to walk out of my room, as I knew what awaited me. I eventually plucked up the courage and let out a scream as I saw him sitting at the kitchen table, eating his breakfast. He looked at me confused and asked if I was okay. I just stood there with my mouth agape until he finally left the apartment. I convinced myself that what happened was all a dream, as it was the only explanation. That night, when he came home, we ended up talking about some random stuff and actually enjoying each other's company for the first time. I got a bit too drunk and decided to try something out. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed the sharpest knife we had. I could see the shock on Adam's face as I plunged the knife into his chest repeatedly. I will admit that I got a bit carried away and stabbed him over 100 times. I walked to my bedroom and couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. I woke up the next day, and yet again Adam was fine. I realized that I could live out my deepest, darkest fantasies, and no one would ever know. Every night, I watched the life leave his body as I used another method to kill him. It became like a ritual that I did just before I went to sleep. I came home this evening and decided to take the night off from killing him, as I was exhausted after a long day of work. I sat down on the couch and just tried to relax. I could see that Adam was giving me a few weird looks, but just ignored him. I saw him shrug before walking away into the kitchen. I had forgotten about him until I felt him stab the fork into my eye. I began to scream in pain as Adam said, "I guess it is my turn now," before running a knife across my neck. My name is Lindsay Harrison. I am a detective, and these last 7 years, I've worked exclusively in homicide. In November of my first year, a news anchor from the local television station had been murdered, and her naked body displayed in a popular park. Every November since, a prominent citizen of our little community has been murdered and similarly displayed in very public places. I've been on the team working the case from the start, and though it pains me to admit, up to this moment, we'd yet to come across a single clue as to whom the killer might be. After the 2nd November, the local paper dubbed the murderer the November celebrity killer, and then set about disparaging me and my colleagues over our inability to solve the case. Each successive year, the criticisms have grown stronger and lasted longer, and each successive year, my colleagues and I have grown more frustrated and bewildered over the fact that we have yet to uncover a single shred of evidence related to any of the killings until today. I just found the following letter addressed to our police station. To whomever it may concern. Not being one to bury the lead, I am the November celebrity killer. As proof, use the enclosed key to unlock safety deposit box 1616 at First National, where you will find a piece of personal property belonging to each of the 6 victims. I have no explanation for having done what I've done, but the burden I feel, from having taken these lives, has increased to the point that I can no longer sustain. You will find my 7th and 8th victims at the return address on this letter's envelope. The 8th victim will be me, and the 7th will be my lovely wife, whom I intend to cross over with. Go in Christ, Reverend George Harrison. I've heard people talk about their blood running cold. Now I know what they meant. I heard the key in the front door, my husband returning from his errands, no doubt, one of which had been carrying the stack of mail from the foyer table to the post office, except for the one he'd accidentally dropped on the foyer floor. I was in the den, but my service revolver was upstairs, locked away in my bedroom closet. The foot of the stairs was near the front door, the door my husband had just entered. My training kept trying to kick in, but my heart kept getting in the way. This last one is about an old girlfriend of mine, and this is her story. That sexy Irish bastard locked me in a room full of zombies. Talk about having shit taste in men, am I right, ladies? I shoulda known he was a serial killer. A well-adjusted, good-looking guy who used soap, had all of his own teeth, and was actually interested in me. Of course, it was too good to be fracking true. So here was the rub. I was trapped in a cramped room with 8 zombies. 4 male, 3 female, 1 too decomposed to tell. And it was gonna be a very long time before anybody came looking for me. Oh sure, I'd told my friends and families where I was going, but since the outbreak, the police had been overwhelmed. Although we'd clawed back some semblance of a functional society, a missing person case would be low on their priorities list. Containing the outbreak was a huge resource drain, which meant the major cities got a little Mad Maxy. Serial killers popped up all over the place. Psychiatrists even had an explanation for the phenomena. Something about a trauma response to the end of the world. And now I'd gone home with one of the lunatics. Fan-fracking-tastic. This was marginally worse than my dinner date with Jerry. Luckily, as everyone knows, zombies are a massively shit way to kill someone. Oh sure, in the early days, they were a threat. But now they had rigor mortis and crumbling limbs, and the hand-eye coordination of a baby swallow. I estimated the room to be roughly 20 square feet. It would probably take the zombies an hour to make it from one end to the other. But I guess that was part of the appeal, right? My death would be an agonizing, drawn-out affair. From behind a thick sheet of glass, my tormentor could watch my gradual descent into madness. I lay down in the corner and rested my eyes. When I opened them again, the zombies were halfway towards me. I stared at the ceiling until they were almost close enough to take a bite, then sidestepped them, steering well clear of their mouths, which snapped open and shut. Then, I curled up against the opposite wall. It wouldn't be too difficult to stay alive. Eventually, somebody would come find me. And for a moment, I let myself believe things would be okay. But then, my captor appeared behind the glass and tapped a button in the wall. His voice came out of a speaker in the ceiling. "Congrat. You've survived a full hour." "I'm impressed. Only an hour," I replied. "Shit, I could do this all day." He smiled. "Really?" I dusted my shoulder. "Yes, really. It's a walk in the park." He grinned. "Well, in that case, let's up the ante." He pressed a button, and then an alarm blared. A moment later, the walls began to tremble. Then they slid inward. Now the room wasn't 20 by 20, it was 19 by 19. My heart dropped, but my captor smiled. See you in another hour.
Please subscribe or the toxic skull will come for you.